Fasten your seatbelt. I am taking you for the ride of your life. I'm going to show you what this car can really do. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Hang on.
Okay.
Here we go.
Hold on to your butt.
Forget him, kid.
To infinity and beyond!
It might be a tumor.
It's not a tumor. Not a tumor at all.
So you can go ahead and ask me what you're going to ask me, and my natural response could be to get offended.
Well, fine, let's talk about it. Any thoughts of your own on this matter? Or is that your thing? You come into a bar, you read some obscure passage, and then pretend you pawn it off as your own idea just to impress some girl?
Just another American who saw too many movies as a child.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
All right.
You're listening to the 30-something Movie Podcast. One movie each week, 30 years in the making. Hello and welcome to the 30-something Movie Podcast. I am your host, John Reed. I have a near full house with me this evening. I've got in the top corner of my screen, none of you can see him because we're an audio podcast, but the top corner of my screen, flying the Millennium Falcon solo, is Bo Warmbold.
Yo.
How you doing, Bo?
I'm well, John. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Excellent.
Dennis, flying your own personal Millennium Falcon.
My mansion on wheels.
There you go. How are you doing, Dennis?
The Toyota Highlander. Doing great. Yep.
There can be only one. Patrick.
How you doing, guys? I was waiting. You just said my name. I was paused. I'm like, oh no, wait a minute. I was waiting for more. Hey guys, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. The way you said my name, am I in trouble already?
No. If you were going to be in trouble, I would have said your full name.
Is there a reason we would think you're in trouble?
Right.
Well,
do you feel guilty, Pat?
Well, so whenever on the podcast someone says my name like that, I always have to think, did I just fall asleep? Did I miss a question? Is he asking me what I think of Gremlins 2?
Electric Boogaloo.
Wax on, wax off.
Mm-hmm.
That's really all there is to it.
That's Bo's favorite part of Gremlins, is the wax on, wax off part.
Uh-huh.
Favorite part of everything.
Gremlins, Rocky
Howard
Horror, the Duck.
Rocky
wax
Horror
on,
Picture
wax
Show.
Off. Always the right answer.
I feel like there's a lot of waxing off in Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yes. Wax aplenty.
Yes. Well, we're going to do a bit of a time warp, and we're going to go back to 1993 for this week's movie. If we sound a little less exuberant than we sometimes do, it's because the movie this time, it be a little heavy. So this is not, in recent weeks, we've done like Mrs. Doubtfire, and we've done some other, we did Krull as one of our Patreon episodes. So we've done some action adventure, we've done some comedy. This episode is Schindler's List. So we're probably going to be, we'll just give you a heads up, we're probably going to be a little less jokey than we usually are. Not to say that we won't, possibly from time to time, but just letting you know that because of the weightiness of this movie, it probably will be a little less humor than you might be used to from the show. But we're going to do our best with it. And I believe I heard from Pat that this was your first time watching this, was just within the last couple of days?
First time watching it within the last, I'd say couple of hours, but I just watched it yesterday.
Yeah, do you need a hug?
Yeah, I need something. It's funny. I remember when this came out and people talking about it, and I'm understanding of the topic matter. I still do like to read a lot of history and study about the Second World War and that time and blah, 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 and so forth. But I never saw the movie. And it was one of those that I kind of missed my window because like everyone had already seen it. And then at that point, you kind of missed your window. And then it's like, okay, we're heading out. What do you want to do? Let's go. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah,
let's go watch a movie of this magnitude is not necessarily something you do for kicks or, hey, college, let's go. So I just never ended up seeing it. And then once we started this podcast, I actually kind of held off because I'm like, I think I want to wait. I'm going to wait for when we do it on the pod. And it'll be a first time watch. So that's kind of my history and reasoning. I don't have a good reason to not have seen it. But yeah. So this, and actually it was last night into this morning. So it was today I have seen this movie.
And I think I ran into Pat today, I think it was probably close to 12, 1 or something like that in the afternoon already.
Yeah.
And when he had that look on his face, and when he talked, we were talking about something else. I'm saying like, "Hey, I saw Schindler's List." And I was like, And he had that look on his face, and you recognize that look. And it's the look because the way I can describe this movie as best would be, it's like one of those films that stays with you. Even though you know the subject matter, even though you've read history, it's not like a surprise of basically what you're talking about or the subject matter. It stays with you.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, let me go through some of our, we usually start the show off with trivia pursuits. We tell you a little bit about the movie we're talking about. Then we give you a little bit of trivia about the movie. Then a quick synopsis. We play the trailer audio for you, and then we kind of break the movie down into 10 major moments to take you through the plot. If you haven't seen the movie, absolutely with this one, we definitely recommend that you go see the movie. Like, this movie is kind of a must-see movie. If it's on a list of movies you've never seen before, you need to watch it at some point. I will say, and I think, Bo, you and I were talking about this before we started recording, was this is not one of those movies that is sure, I'm going to watch this every year or every couple of years. I honestly think that this is maybe I've watched it twice in my life, and that might be enough. I will appreciate it for the rest of my life, but I'm not sure I'm going to do a whole lot of repeat viewings of this one. So if I happen to mention later that there's a specific reason why I don't necessarily own a physical copy of this movie, is because I don't know that I would be rewatching it regularly enough to justify owning a physical copy of this movie. Not that I don't like the movie, not that it's not worthy of that, but it is just one of those that I think it is so hard to watch. It's an amazing movie, but it's so hard to watch that I think it's one of those that you watch maybe a couple times. There may be some people that watch it regularly, but I think it's one of those, for me at least, that I watch it a couple of times and then I will remember it, and that's all it needs to be. So, but anyway, yes, that is the breakdown. So we'll take you through the trivia pursuits right now. The release date for this one was December 15th, 1993, rated R. It was 3 hours and 15 minutes, directed by Steven Spielberg, who did Jurassic Park. Actually did Jurassic Park in the same year as this movie. So if that doesn't shock you as well, that we can go from Jurassic Park to Schindler's List in the exact same year, that was a good year for Mr. Spielberg. He also did E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Writers were Thomas Keneally, who wrote the book, and Steven Zaillian, who wrote the screenplay. Keneally also did The Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith, and Zaillian did American Gangster and Gangs of New York. Producers were Steven Spielberg, Gerald R. Mullen, and Branko Lustig. Spielberg did Saving Private Ryan, Jurassic Park. Mullen did Hook and Jurassic Park, and Lustig did Gladiator and Black Hawk Down. Composer was John Williams, did most of our childhood, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, all those. Of course, we will probably play some of the soundtrack a little bit later, but Itzhak Perlman was also heavily featured in the soundtrack, especially in that theme from Schindler's List. We'll play a little bit of that as we go along. Janusz Kaminski was the cinematographer, did Saving Private Ryan and The Post. Editor was Michael Kahn, who did Raiders of the Lost Ark and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Production company was Amblin Entertainment and Universal Pictures. Budget was $22 million. Box office was $322.1 million. Cinema Score gives it an A+, and Flickmetrics gives it a 91%. I also feel like this is one of those rare movies where we see a Cinema Score and a Flickmetrics that are near perfect. You don't tend to see too many Flickmetrics movies that make it up into the 90s. And not too many Cinema Scores that get the A+, I don't feel like. Actors in this one, Liam Neeson played Oscar Schindler. He was in Taken and The Grey. Ben Kingsley was Itzhak Stern. He was in Gandhi and Iron Man 3. Ray Fiennes played Amon Gert. He was in The English Patient and The Grand Budapest Hotel. Caroline Goodall played Emily Schindler. She was in Hook and The Dressmaker. Jonathan Segal played Poldek Pfefferberg. He was in Lemon Popsicle and Baby Love. And Beth Davids played Helen Hirsch. She was in Matilda and Bicentennial Man, also Army of Darkness. Andrzej Seweryn played Julian Shermer. He was in The Promise and The French Minister. Let's see. Shmuel Levy played Willick Chilowitz. Was in just a few movies here, and there's a few little things here and there. And then let's see. Yeah, that's about it for the cast. A little trivia here. So, couple things that were kind of interesting about this movie. Getting costumes for about 20,000 extras was not an easy task. So the costume designer for this one put out ads for old clothing. They were filming a lot of this in Poland, And since times were tough in Poland at the time, many people were very willing to sell some of their clothes, and a lot of people still had clothing from the 30s and 40s. So that's why a lot of the clothing looks so accurate, because it is actually from the time period. After Steven Spielberg showed John Williams a cut of the movie, Williams was so touched he had to step outside to kind of pull himself together. He then told Steven Spielberg that you need a better composer than me, and Spielberg joked and said, "I know, but they're all dead, so you're basically it." I'm glad they're friends.
Yeah.
Spielberg first considered making the movie in Polish and German with English subtitles, but then he figured he wouldn't be able to gauge some of the acting in languages that he didn't necessarily understand. Spielberg also felt strongly about not taking any money from this film. He referred to it as blood money. So instead, all of his earnings went to the Shoah Foundation. They do recordings of stories from survivors of genocides, including the Holocaust. I'm not sure. I meant to go look this up and see, but I believe the Holocaust Museum here in Illinois, in Skokie, they had a project, and I feel like it might have been the Shoah Project, but I'm not sure. And I believe they've worked with Steven Spielberg on it. And they were doing artificial intelligence holograms of Holocaust survivors. Like, they had recorded interviews with them, and they had built in this kind of AI system where you as the audience can ask the hologram of the Holocaust survivor a question, and based on the interviews that they gave, it'll pull up an answer and have the hologram actually speak out the answer as if they are answering your question. It was really, really cool to see. I think it maybe is that same foundation that Spielberg gave his earnings for the movie to, but I know when we went there not that long ago, they did talk about how Steven Spielberg had helped fund that hologram project. Any of you guys ever gone to see that?
No, but I've heard about it from you and some others who have.
Yeah.
It sounds amazing.
It was.
I'm not.
Yeah. It was a little eerie. You know,
I've heard that it's amazing, especially and John, you may be the one telling me this, but just, you could ask questions and there's, if I'm telling you what you originally told me, my apologies, but I want to say that someone was describing this, and every time you go, it could be a different person.
Yes.
And they would, depending on what you ask, that conversation could be completely different.
Yeah. I don't remember how many, but they had several different people, and depending on what time of day or what day you went, they were featuring a different person each time. And so they were, and some of the, and of course it's been months now since I've been, may have even been almost a year since I've been, and I know they were talking about the AI was only going to keep getting better for them to be able to ask and answer questions and things like that. But yeah, it was amazing when we went. Let's see what other trivia I've got. I got a couple things in here for us. Oh, and we're going to talk about this later because it's in my mind, it's one of those pivotal scenes in the whole movie. The scene with the girl in the red coat. So apparently that was inspired by a story Audrey Hepburn told Spielberg. She said that she remembered seeing a similar thing happen during World War II, and he was so moved by it that he added it to the movie. But the one interesting thing about this too is the young actress who played the girl, Spielberg made her and her parents promise that she would not watch this movie until she was 18 years old. He did not want to scar her for life, so he made them promise that she would not watch this until she turned 18, and apparently she did not wait and was pretty inconsolable when she watched it at age 11. No, 11, probably not the right age to watch this movie.
No, it takes a little, wow. Yeah.
As Shakespeare put it, it takes some sterner stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the last one I've got, this one is kind of funny, a little lighthearted, given the weightiness of the movie. Filming was actually so intense and heavy that Spielberg needed a little break from now and then. He would call up his buddy Robin Williams to crack some jokes, or he'd go watch, he apparently would binge watch Seinfeld episodes while he was in the middle of filming Schindler's List. And a little fun fact here, some of Robin Williams' off-the-cuff bits that he did with Spielberg actually made it into Aladdin as some of the lines spoken by the genie.
Oh, that's funny.
So without Schindler's List, you would not have Robin Williams' Aladdin genie. Think about that for a while.
Hey, for a second, my thing cut out for a second, but did you also know the story of him were you saying about him with Steven Spielberg, the phone call?
About
hear that?
When Robin Williams would call him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and kind of tell him jokes to kind of lighten the mood a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That it wouldn't have been made maybe. That it was supposed to go to Scorsese. He took it back. Scorsese got taped there. And then...
Oh, you're talking about like him actually getting the movie.
Well, it's about getting in the movie, but no, the emotional toll, because he wasn't sure that he could do it because of the emotional toll. And and it was Robin Williams doing like 15 minutes of stand-up. He'd make him laugh. I think the quote, I pulled it up. I don't know if this one's here, but it says... It was basically saying that, Robin Williams would do like 15 minutes of stand-up from a scheduled time almost.
Yeah.
Because he needed that release or whatever. And then when he had him laughing at his loudest, the Robin Williams thing was not say goodbye, he would just hang up.
Yeah.
So like mission accomplished type thing.
Right. Well, synopsis for this one: in a world ravaged by war where humanity hangs by a thread, Liam Neeson is Oscar Schindler, a man caught between profit and conscience. Ben Kingsley as Itzhak Stern becomes his unlikely ally. Together, they will try to defy the odds against characters such as the ruthless Eamon Gert, played by Ralph Fiennes. This is Schindler's List.
I'd make sure it's known the company's in business. I'd see that it had a certain panache. That's what I'm good at. Not the work. Not the work. The presentation. Kielbasa sausage, cheeses, beluga caviar. And of course, who could live without German cigarettes? Get as many as you can find. Some more fresh fruit. The real rarities. Oranges, lemons, pineapples. I need several boxes of Cuban cigars. The best. And dark unsweetened chocolate, not in the shape of ladyfingers. It's a chunk of chocolate, big as my hand. You sample as wine tastings. 900, no, make it 10 for Wednesday. And all this stuff here goes to Majesty's factory. I lost a worker. I expect to be compensated.
He's on the list.
He is? Well, let's find him.
Stern! 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 Itzhak, Stern! Stop the train! He's here! Stop the train! Stop the train!
I woke up from a dream this morning. I was broke and sharing a room with 12 people I didn't know.
Who will want to start, huh? Do you have any questions, sir?
Yeah, well, it's top down. I'm freezing.
What's your name?
Helen Hirsch.
Your cartoon! Deine Papiere, Jude! Deine Papiere, Jude!
These in your pocket.
I have to find every rag, bury it up here, and burn it.
The list is alive. All around its margins lies the gulf.
So very, very quickly, the 10 major moments of this one. Again, we highly recommend you go watch this movie first and then come on back to this episode. But if you have watched the movie recently or you've watched the movie and you just need a kind of quick refresher, that's what these 10 major moments will be. It will not obviously touch on everything from the nearly 3.5 hour movie, but we'll try to do the best we can to give you a quick flyover of the plot of this one. So major moment number 1 is the establishment of the Krakow ghetto. The Nazis are forcing local Polish Jews into the overcrowded Krakow ghetto during World War II. Oscar Schindler, a German Nazi Party member, arrives in Krakow, acquires a factory to produce enamelware, and collaborates with Itzhak Stern to ensure many Jewish workers are deemed essential to the German war effort. I will interrupt here for a moment and just say, at the beginning of the movie, obviously we see that he is doing this for profit. He's doing this to line his own pockets, to make his products, to do that. But obviously, as the movie
because
goes
he doesn't
on,
have to pay the Jews for work.
Correct. If he hired Polish workers, it would be more expensive, and he doesn't want to do that. So that is part of the reason for hiring the Jewish workers and deeming them as essential workers to the war effort. We are introduced to the character of Amon Gert and his brutality. Amon Gert oversees the Plaszow concentration camp's construction, orders the liquidation of the ghetto, leading to the death or transportation of thousands of Jews. Schindler witnesses this massacre and is profoundly moved. And like I said, we're doing a quick fly-through of the plot. We're going to talk more about some of these scenes specifically here in just a minute. This is where Schindler starts to have a change of heart after observing these atrocities, especially noticing a young girl in a red coat. Schindler's motivations start to shift from profit to saving Jewish lives. There's the creation of Schindler's kind of sub-camp. He bribes Goethe to allow him to establish a sub-camp at his factory to better protect his workers. He has a list of 1,100 names. As Jews are scheduled to be sent to Auschwitz, Schindler and Stern compile a list of 1,100 workers to be transferred to Schindler's new munitions factory in Brunlitz. The Auschwitz-Birkenau detour. Female Jewish workers are accidentally sent to Auschwitz-Birkenau. Schindler intervenes by bribing the commandant, Rudolf Höss, to secure their release. At the Brunlitz factory, Schindler ensures better treatment for his Jewish workers and by various means prevents the factory from producing usable armaments. He then spends his entire fortune on bribes and other necessities. With the war ending and the Red Army advancing, Schindler has to flee. He does persuade SS not to kill the Jewish workforce, bids them farewell, and receives a token of gratitude, a ring that is inscribed with a Talmudic quotation. And then finally, the epilogue for the movie reveals kind of the post-war fates of key characters, and in the present, the surviving members of Schindler's List and the actors portraying them pay their respects at Schindler's grave, including Liam Neeson in that scene. So those are the major moments for this one. Like I said, we're going to talk more about some of the specifics as we get into our deeper thoughts here. So let's go now into deep thoughts.
And now, Deep Thoughts.
I have an opinion on this matter.
Don't mince words, Bones. What do you really think?
I like it a lot.
Wow. It's very deep. Thank you.
So my first question will be, and we've already talked to Pat about this one. Do you recall when the first time was that you saw this movie? And what do you remember about the first time seeing this?
Yeah, please go.
Bo, you go.
I probably saw it in high school. I was a little young to have seen it when it first came out, I feel like. And it's been long enough that I admit to not remembering details, but it's the big stuff that stands out. The girl in the red coat, the scene of the liquidating the ghetto, and then the scene when some of the women are put into one of the showers at the concentration camp. And I remember thinking then, it's funny, it had been just long enough. As I'm sitting there watching it, I'm like, oh God, is this what I think it is? And then it turns out just to be a shower that time.
Yeah.
But both times I saw it, that scene, just because you know enough about what happened that you sort of steel yourself for what's about to happen. And yeah. So yeah, that's kind of what I remembered from seeing it. Yeah.
Dennis, do you remember the first time you saw it?
Yeah, I do. And what was the full question? Was it just the first time you saw it, or was there a second part how'd you word that?
Yeah, first time you saw it, and what do you remember about the first time you saw it?
All right. So first time I saw it, I was about 22. We didn't see it at the theater. I do not believe. I don't remember seeing it at the theater. I saw it on, like DVD or VHS right away when it was released. We saw it at home with my family. And what do I remember? I remember being very angry. These type of things that are like sad like this, where it's kind of man's inhumanity to man type of thing. I remember being I didn't cry throughout the movie. I know what scene made me cry, and I referred to it today with Pat. It's the one where he starts realizing like people are thanking him, and he's like, well, this button, or this could have been 2 more people, or this. When he was going through that, and in the way he was just responding, that's when all of a sudden, I think all of the emotion of the movie, the anger, the frustration, the sadness, all that, but no tears yet. Just at that point, I remember crying like crazy, like kind of bursting into tears, sort of, or just like it started off with a slow, not bursting, I guess, slow and then steady stream of just tears. And it was because of the fact of the goodness, sort of that. I wish I could have done more type of thing. And they were already like, no, thank you so much. Thank you so, like, and they kept thanking him, and they felt for him. And it just that scene is the scene that stuck with me the most. All the ones Bo mentioned, yes, those are horrifying. A lot of those are very powerful. But the one that stuck for me to this day from that movie is the scene where he's trying to say, like, I could have gotten 2 more out, or 3 more. I could have saved 2 more lives. And things were representing people in a way. So it was kind of a weird.
Yeah, for me, that was the exact same scene. I actually posted on Twitter earlier today that we were going to be recording this one, and the comment that I made was that the scene in particular that really affected me was the exact same one. Like when he starts lamenting that he could have done so much more, and they're trying to reassure him that he did so much.
All right, yeah.
The first time I saw this, I believe, was in high school. We had, in fact, Bo, you might have been there with me for this, because I remember, I don't know if it was our junior year or senior year, but we actually went to, might have been College of Lake County, and we were going to see a viewing of it in one of their theaters that they had, and they had a couple of Holocaust survivors there to talk about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good pull from that memory.
Yeah. And you would have been there with me because we were same class, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the first time I remember seeing this. Was in high school. We went and we saw it, but there were a couple of Holocaust survivors, and I don't remember if they talked before the movie or after the movie, but that was part of the viewing of it.
That's wow. I forgot about that.
And then I feel like I watched it maybe one more time in college a few years later. So this watching of it will have been my 3rd time watching it. And I think for me, like you can't help but be affected by this movie. I think for me, what made it even more powerful was not just having the Holocaust survivors there to talk about it after we had watched the movie in high school, but the fact that I had been, when we used to live over in Europe, we had gone to a couple of different concentration camps, as we were visiting Germany. We went to, there's the one that's actually in Bavaria, Dachau. Dachau was the concentration camp we went to and visited. And I went there and visited that as probably a 12 or 13-year-old. And like to see that for the first time, like to witness that and be there and see the place and see the different photographs they had and signs explaining what went on there. And, that's not even one of the worst of the concentration camps, but just to see what things would have been like, and just even get something of a glimpse of that was just, it was a big impact on a 12-year-old.
At that age, did you sense and again, I have never been to one of those in person, but like I've been to obviously certain things and that I've seen about those.
Yeah.
I get the feeling in a place like that, is there just this weird, powerful sense, some sort of like energy, like a weird, almost like a spiritual, in not necessarily a nice way, but like,
right.
I don't know, like a haunted way, like a haunted spirit or vibe about the place. Like, do you feel like a certain presence or a certain like heaviness?
You felt a heaviness of when you started to, I think partially because of how the adults were all acting there. As a kid, you kind of played off of the adults are quiet and sullen, and something's going on here. And then I think I was old enough. I really don't think my brother and sister were probably old enough to understand, because I was probably 12, so my sister would have been 9. My brother would have been, what would my brother have been? Maybe 5 at that point. So they're not going to understand what's going on. And I think at age 12, I was just barely able to kind of understand what was entailed by what happened there. My dad always loved history, so I remember he was constantly watching like history documentary before there was a History Channel. Like, he'd watch documentaries. Yeah. He was constantly reading books, and he would talk about the things he was reading. And so, when we went to these different places, he was well read enough that he was kind of like our own tour guide everywhere we went. And so he kind of prepared us for what we were going to see and all of that. So, yeah, I think as a 12-year-old, the understanding that I came away with was, I knew that something very serious had happened here. I knew the general sense of it was a horrible place where people were murdered. I don't think you get the real, at that age in particular, I don't think you get the real magnitude of what it was. But just being there, it was very quiet and eerie, and quiet, eerie, and serious. And you could
Did your dad ever watch? I'm gonna have to look this up, but because you said about him watching things, I remember my dad watching all those old big history buff and all that on that. And wasn't there the series something called The World at War?
Oh, I'm sure he watched that. Yeah.
TV show, and I remember from the credits, and I have to look this up. I want to say it had to be in the 70s, probably 80s, but 70s, I think, because I remember it as a little kid and kind of like catching the opening and closing credits. Isn't there one where they were like, it was like this very like almost Schindler's List type of music, and there was a very dramatic theme, and there was like the kind of the burning of like pictures almost, or like, and you'd see all these like pictures from the war and like the concentration camps and people's sad faces in war. And do you remember that series at all, or no? Was it called The World at War?
Yeah, that sounds familiar. It was. I looked it up real fast while you were talking. It's from the 70s. It was about 26 episodes, and it was kind of chronicling.
It was like this very, very whatever theme, and I just remember the images as a kid, not watching all the episodes, but just the opening, closing, and they would show those sad faces, and they would people in like camps and things like. It was just it was pretty traumatic, or just like very it just gave me this weird vibe as a kid seeing that, like a weird feeling, sadness. And I didn't even know what was probably going on at that. I was probably 7, 8, 9, 10, but I would catch glimpses of that stuff. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I will say anybody who ever has the opportunity, I mean, obviously it's not like a happy, fun activity when you're going on vacation somewhere. But if you're ever going to be anywhere in Europe where you have the opportunity to go to one of these camps, I would, for your humanity and your soul, I would recommend going to one, just to have the experience, to go there, to not to be sadistic in any way, but I feel like you really need to have gone to one of these places to truly even get a glimpse of the magnitude of what happened there. I mean, and I'm not saying that me at age 12 really, truly understood, even after being there, but at age 12, I understood that I was experiencing something, and I was in a place that was going to be very different from anything I might ever see. So if you are ever going to be traveling in Poland or Germany or somewhere like that, I highly recommend visiting one of the camps if you have a chance to. So, Pat, you tell us a little bit about, you watched it within the last 24 hours. So how's your last 24 hours been?
Well, like Dennis said, he saw me today, and it was kind of like the movie just sits with you. And boy, there's nothing really I can add that you guys haven't. I mean, it's just, I just have no words. I just have no words, to describe that. And it's just, it's like I guess there's probably examples all throughout history of this, but it's just something that you don't ever want to forget or let go of or want to see happen again. Right. And so it's just to see that I'm stumbling for words because I just have no words. I mean, and I guess, we're talking about the incident that this movie was, the Holocaust. In this movie, this story came out of that. So I think this movie just does an incredible job of capturing that on the screen and really just involving the audience in a way that it sticks with you and the story sticks with you so that you never forget. Right. And I just have no words. It was an incredibly moving experience, and one that will not soon forget.
And I will probably get into this more too. I think the other thing that I always thought of why it stuck to, I think it just the fact that it was black and white.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to process why that was such a great choice. And I almost kind of think like everything I saw of that time back then was black and white pictures. And by keeping it black and white, I felt like those stories came to life as black and white, where if color, I would have maybe, I don't know. I was always trying to think of like why that, like, I think the black and white choice was just so excellent to go with the black and white.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's interviews of him where he explained that choice or what it was, but that's all I can think of is like I had a connection to seeing these photos in books, to seeing these photos everywhere else, like that my dad in the history stuff, you could see it was all black and white for the most part. And these people in these photos, and now all of a sudden they're moving and they have characters and they're people and you're meeting them. They're not just a picture on a page in black and white. They're a black and white photo that's come to life, basically. Yeah. And now I have to care. Now I'm really like deeply connected because like that's you're going to care deeper.
Yeah, my understanding of it is that he really wanted it to look. He wanted it to look like a documentary. And so if you notice, most of the scenes, it's all in black. Well, I say most of it's all in black and white. We'll talk in a minute about the times where it's not. But the whole movie's in black and white. And if you notice, when the movie goes through, when you are seeing the most ugly, horrifying moments of this movie, it's not only is it black and white, it's also handheld camera. And it's filmed in such a way. And if you look and compare most of Spielberg's stuff, even just compare Jurassic Park with this movie, Jurassic Park, everything is smooth. Everything is, all the camera work everything's probably on a dolly. And it's very, very meticulous and very graceful camera work, whereas a lot of this is handheld. I'm actually, while we're recording, I've got the movie playing on a screen that's kind of off to the side here, so I'm glancing up every now and then and looking to see what's on the screen. And it's one of the scenes where they are burning some of the bodies and the ash is falling down on the streets and the cars, and Schindler wipes some of the ash. They think it's snowing for a minute, and then he wipes some of it off the car and realizes what's happening. And that whole scene is handheld camera footage. When it's back and he's in his office talking to Stern, it's back to being regular fixed camera work. But whenever you've got like the clearing of the ghetto, when you've got the burning of the bodies, any of those type of scenes where something is just the ugliness of humanity, it's all handheld camera so that it really looks like you are watching a documentary. So I think that's part of the reason why it's in black and white, is because, to your point, Dennis, I think Spielberg wanted this to be like those photographs come to life, so that you really not just see the photograph, but get to see the life behind the photograph.
Yeah. And it works so well. And I think that's like the big connection.
Yeah.
And the handheld thing, and he realized, I think, the value of the connection of that, like, because there's that emotional, or not emotional, that uneasiness with a lot of that, and also feeling like you're there. Which he then later, I think, reused so well. It wasn't in black and white, but the opening of Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah. And I feel like early 90s, you didn't have a lot of handheld camera work. Like that was something that was still...
It wasn't until after Blair Witch Project, which I don't know what year that was, that became a thing.
Is that 97, maybe?
Yeah.
98, maybe? Yeah. Yeah, so I wanted to actually go to, and I want you guys to, you chime in as well. I've got a list of some scenes that I just kind of wanted to bring up in the movie, and we can kind of go through some of these and just touch on these real quick. But some of the ones that I think were most impactful for me were the shooting of the one-armed man when he's trying to, he's trying to remind everybody, tell the soldiers that you're an essential worker. Tell the soldiers you're essential. And they pull that one older man aside, and it was in the earlier scenes where he had gone to thank Oskar Schindler personally, and this was kind of around the time where Schindler was still looking at this as, look, I don't want to talk to these people. I'm trying to make my products. I'm trying to make money here. Don't bring these people to come thank me for anything. These are my workers. And then a few scenes later, you have the old man pulled out in the street and then shot in the head as the rest of them are clearing the snow. The one scene, though, I think is probably the most pivotal in the whole movie, and that's like the turning point for Schindler himself, is when they are clearing the ghetto. And you have that whole scene, especially as everything is on street level and everything is happening on the streets. It's the handheld camera. It's everything is gritty and kind of rough, and it's got that documentary feel to it, like you're really right there in the streets. And then you see Schindler is seeing this happen from atop a hill nearby, and he kind of sees down into the streets and kind of what's happening. And I think that's really kind of the turning point in the movie, where he's moving from I gotta make my products, I gotta make my profit, to this is awful. Like this can't stand. We have to do something about this. And that also happens to be the scene where you see the little girl in the red coat. And I wanted to see if you guys picked up on, I believe there are only 3 times in the movie where you see any kind of color. And that is at the beginning of the movie, when you have the Jewish family modern day that are lighting the candles. I believe it's after when Schindler had told his workers, I think he asked one of his workers, why are you not preparing for the Sabbath? Shouldn't you be doing that? And then you see a scene of them lighting some candles, and the only color in the scene is the flame of the candle. And then the only other color you see is the girl in the red coat.
And then at the end.
And then at the end, yes.
Yeah.
At the end as well. But those are the only times that you see color. I believe I read in an article why he chose to do it that way. I'm curious from you guys, did you pick up or did you get a sense of why you felt like those were the parts that introduced color? Like, what was the significance of that for you?
I felt the present day stuff was in color mostly just to set it apart from what you were about to see or what you had just seen. The candle is a symbol of a lot of things. You have the Hanukkah symbolism for sure, and a flame that keeps burning, the fight of a people who won't give up. So yeah, those were, the girl in the red dress, I think I'm blanking on it. It's been talked about a lot, so I think that's part of why I'm blanking on it. Yeah. Because it's not really a feeling. It's been talked about a lot why the girl in the red dress is there. Sure. Oh my gosh, this is...
Well, I think the girl in the red dress is like his realization that her blood is on his hands. And I think that's been phrased that way before too. I think I remember seeing that in places. That's what I always, and that's like his turning point.
I saw the candles as they lit. It was like the warmth given by the candles, like a little bit of humanity.
Yeah.
I don't know all the symbols of the girl in the red dress oh my God, the girl in the red dress, the girl in the red coat. I don't know exactly what the intended symbol was, but for me, it was just sometimes watching in black and white. I mean, it's a powerful statement, and it's like, either it's nostalgic. Sometimes it sanitizes things in a way, almost makes it more accessible. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but it allows you to see these depictions of great sadness and great horror. It allows you to see them and still feel, I don't know, maybe removed from it, right? Like it feels like you're looking back into another thing. So it kind of keeps the viewer maybe in a safe place almost, so that they don't completely shut down. I don't know. And I'm just assuming, I'm just trying to put together my random thoughts. When you see something of color, it's kind of it's like a hook pulling you back in so that you don't get too far removed from it and realize, but it's like, because obviously people living through that time period didn't see things in black and white. So it kind of links you into, okay, no, this was very real. This wasn't a movie. This wasn't pretend. This isn't a story. This was very real. And I think seeing the girl in the red coat kind of helps do that. It's just a little hint that, okay, this is something real people lived through. And then it allowed that scene was the counterpunch. You see the girl in the red coat, and then later when, you see her remains, it allows him to process that that's the same person, and it allows the audience to process that it's the same person, but they can actually show just how badly she had become, just how grotesque it was, like just that her body had been ravaged. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the simple way to do that is you don't need to have, you don't need to like have the actress and sitting there and kind of dress up the body. You just have the red coat, and then it's like, oh my God, that was that person, Yeah. And I think the color, for me, the color at the beginning and then the color at the end as things come into color. Bo, I totally hear what you're saying, where it separates it from the present and the past. And I tell you, I kind of see it as things kind of came into color. For me, it helps to separate them, but to kind of, I'm going to say the complete opposite, but to connect it, to process that, okay, well, we're watching something in black and white, and there's so many different reasons that that's effective. But now we're going to put it into color to realize that was a generation ago, people that were like my grandparents' generation and more. If when we add color in, you realize, okay, that wasn't some far off land. That was not a disconnect. Like those were real people, right? Just like us having to go through this horrendous, this horrible situation. And I think when you add a little bit of color, it's like dawns on you like, oh man, like people were living through this in color. And now all those things that you saw from like a sanitized point of view, suddenly you process you realize you couldn't imagine what that would have been like there, right? Just looking at all these bodies with blood all over the place, people being shot in the arms of their loved ones. And you see, when the blood comes out and, people are spurting up in people's faces and all that, when it's black and white, that's horrible.
Yeah.
But then you imagine, well, that was color. That was real life. There was no safety. There was no safety net like we have with the black and white. So
it desaturated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I had read was that, Dennis, I know you mentioned that it was the idea that the girl's blood would be on his hands. One of the things I had read was the color was used, at least the candle flame and the girl in the red coat, was as a symbol for hope. That was
hope, yeah.
Like for the first time they were able to light the candles. That was hope for the Jews in that situation. And then the girl in the red coat was not necessarily that it was hope for the Jews in that particular scene, because it was the clearing of the ghetto and everything was pretty horrible, but rather that that was going to be a turning point, and seeing that little girl walking down the street was going to be what turned things for Schindler from profit to actually saving lives. And then I think that kind of solidifies it, because I think after they recover her body and they see, they're pushing a cart and her burned body is kind of at the top of the cart in one of those scenes. I believe it's like one or two scenes later is when they start making the official quote unquote list, the 1,100 names. And at that point, it's that little girl has been a turning point a couple of times. That was what turned him from profit to compassion. And then at that point motivated him to then start to put this list together. And I think those were the two times in the movie that led to the idea that there was going to be hope for these 1,100 people. So
yeah, and I think Pat, you had that too. You were basically, you didn't say hope. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I think you used the word warming or something. It was like more like a warm feeling or something, which someone could describe as hope. So, so you were right. I think experiencing that the same way.
Yeah. I did want to talk for a second about Ray Fiennes' character, Amon Gert. What a slimy human being. I mean, he is just, there's nothing. It is interesting because I read an interview where he was asked about it, and he said that, and you do see this in the movie, an absolutely terrible person, a terrible, terrible human being. But at the same time, Ray Fiennes does an amazing acting job by having some moments to make him human. And I think part of that too is to say, let's not dismiss these people as these cartoonish villains, but rather they are humans who have done horribly, horribly wrong things. Like so yes, we can call them monsters, but at one point in time, this was a human being. Like at one point in time, he was a child. He was somebody's son. And somehow he grew up into a life where he was a member of, the Nazis and did these absolutely horrible things and treated people in horrible ways. I mean, you've got the scenes where he's trying to seduce, what was her name? Helen, I think was her name. And Beth Davitt's, her character. You've got the scene he's trying to seduce her and then ultimately blames her for the seduction and then beats her. And you have the scene where he's sitting on his balcony, smoking his cigar or cigarette, and then starting to shoot the workers that he believes are not working hard enough with his rifle. Just an absolutely terrible, monstrous human being. But there are still moments where Ralph Fiennes does such a great job of making him a human being and not just some kind of cartoonish, two-dimensional villain.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot trickier when it's like you do see those moments that makes you, like you said, it's easier if the person's just all bad all the time, evil. Yeah. It's easier in some ways. You're like scary old monster, but it's like there's not much there. You struggle a little bit with it when it becomes, wow, how did this person get to be this?
Yeah.
Because there's obviously some elements that are human that we recognize, and it would be easier if I could just write it off as no redeeming quality whatsoever. No, he was always a bad guy.
Right.
And so I was like, where did people go wrong? And there is that whole, we've talked about this in other films. It also kind of gives it to light, I think, some of the idea that, we could all look back in history and say what we would have done and what we would have been and how we would have stopped this and how we would have stopped that. We would be all Oscar Schindlers. But at the same time, statistically, some of us would have been him.
Yeah, and you see a couple of examples throughout the movie of even little kids saying things that would just be absolutely horrendous. I mean, you have the one little kid at the beginning that's yelling, "Goodbye, Jews, goodbye, Jews." And they have all the kids that are screaming at him. You've got a scene later in the movie when they're all on the train and they pass by this one little boy that's kind of standing in a field and he does the finger across the throat because he knows it's a train full of Jewish people. And so you're seeing all these examples and realizing, well, this is how people become these monsters who are willing to do these type of things to other human beings, is that it has to be taught. Like, that's not something that's naturally going to come out of a child's mind. This has to be taught. And I think that's one of the reasons why this movie should be watched, even if you're hesitant to see it because of the kind of intense nature of it all. I think it deserves to be watched and needs to be watched because it is one of these that shows, look, if we allow this kind of stuff, if we allow people to treat other human beings in this way, then look what happens. And I'm sure the people at the time, I wasn't alive during the time, but I'm sure the people at the time would have thought, no, this is impossible. Like, this can't happen. And then I think that's why so many died, because they were convinced, well, no, they can't be doing that. Like, they can't be executing this many people. They can't be this many people dying, just because it was so unbelievable. And I think that's the worry, is when you start treating people as different from us, then you run the risk of repeating this kind of junk again.
I think I always remember I think I've maybe said this quote before, but it was Peter Gabriel saying, or whatever it was, like when you said the us and all that. I think it was like when you have people, because one of his albums is called Us. He talked about the word, it was some special or whatever. I remember saying it. And he was saying, I think the quote was kind of like, when you put people in a box marked them, it's very easy to kick it around. But when you put them in a box marked us, it's not so easy to kick around anymore. Something along those lines. So we need to fill up the box marked us and eliminate the box marked them. So that kind of like type of thing. And when you said the objects, it made me think of, and not that they were objects necessarily in that movie, I guess in a way they were. 4 years later, there's a film that I did see at the theater, probably because of Schindler's List initially, like willing to go, okay, I'll see this. And it was Life is Beautiful, which hopefully we'll have in 4 months. And if you remember, like I think of when you talked about, he connects with the character in there. What's his name? What's the main guy's name? Benito. Benito. Yeah.
Roberto Bernini.
Roberto Benini. That's it. Yeah. When he has that guy that he knows, that like officer, and he's like, they do the riddles.
Yes.
Remember that? And then the guy was like and there was that look on his face when he realized that the guy was just so like frustrated, but it wasn't because of people or what was happening. It was just because he couldn't figure out that darn riddle.
Yeah.
And he was just so aggravated by it. And it was just like, and Roberto Benigni's character just has this look like he thought this guy was like a human being, like who felt for them and like in a certain way. And then all of a sudden he realizes like, it's just, you're just worried about the riddle. You don't see anything that's going on around you. You're so disconnected from all of us and our suffering.
I was thinking, I mixed the actor's name with the character's name. His character's name was Guido.
Yeah. Yes, Guido. Yeah.
Yeah, that was 98. So yeah, in 5 more years we'll be doing that one.
Oh, it's 98? I thought it was 97.
You know what? It could have been 97 in Italy.
Okay.
Yeah,
that may be it.
Well, before we move into 3 questions and any of the other stuff, do you guys have any other scenes you want to kind of showcase? One of the only other ones I wanted to mention is just the one scene. I mean, we kind of talked a little bit earlier about the scene where Schindler they're thanking him and he's saying he's just breaking down and saying I could have done so much more. The other scene that I thought was really powerful when there's the mistake and the women are all sent to Auschwitz. The men are all sent to his camp. The women are sent to Auschwitz, and he goes and tries to, go get them. There's 2 scenes in particular there. One where everybody's in the shower room and they think it's all going to be gas. And then the water comes out and they just start, you could just tell it's like tears of relief. Like people start crying and some of them almost even laughing, it looks like. But then you follow that scene with actually seeing people get sent to I think you actually see them get sent to actual gas chambers. And then I think it's a scene or 2 after that, as some of the soldiers are trying to pull the children apart from the parents, because nobody needs the children as workers, and Schindler is there and starting to try to pull them back and says, look, I need these. And they're like, what do you need kids for? You little kids? You're not going to use little kids in your factory. And he, on the fly, comes up with well, who else do you think has small enough fingers to be able to clean out these shell casings? If you know anybody else that has little teeny tiny fingers like this that can help do this job for me, then by all means, go find those people for me. Otherwise, give me back my workers. And I think those scenes in particular, as we kind of near the end of the movie, are just really powerful.
I think the one with "One Day This Will End" scene, I remember that one. I was going to there was some notes about that one. I jotted down somewhere, I thought, because I remember seeing it in the Spielberg talk about that scene. That's the one where he's with Ben Kingsley's character.
Yeah.
And that's another one that kind of always stuck out with me. I'll have to look. I'm gonna have to look that one up for a second, because there was notes about the way he filmed that scene and the pauses or something. It was like all about the pauses.
Yeah.
And how they let 2 men just kind of like have this conversation and connect in a way. And it all had to do with the pausing in that scene, I think, was what it was, pacing and pausing in that particular scene, the way he filmed it.
Any other scenes that you guys thought of before we move on to our 3 questions? Anything else you guys thought of? Any scenes in particular that kind of hit you with this one, or ones that we haven't pointed out yet?
No, I don't have anything like, for me, like I said, I need to rewatch and break down to kind of come up with ones. It all just kind of stuck out. What you guys talked about and the way you broke down, I thought was pretty incredible. It's interesting. I thought the Ralph Fiennes character reminded me of the way they would describe from ancient times, like different Roman emperors or Caesars or whatever, that were like insane or not right. So that would be living in the lap of luxury, but abusing their people and all that. That's what that character reminded me of. He seemed, to say he wasn't all there is kind of the understatement of the century, but that's what it reminded me of, is the way that sometimes in literature or historical stories, if you will, the way that they would describe that, where they're not all quite right, so they don't quite see the humanity in other people, and they'll be doing things that are incredibly abusive. But then when Schindler's able to kind of sucker him in with the whole, hey, power isn't that you can kill someone, power is that you forgive someone. And then the next couple of scenes, he's walking around trying to say, hey, I forgive you. But then he in many ways, he seemed like a spoiled child. The camp director, that's what I was struck with. And so a lot of those scenes, it was just, I found that an interesting thing. And I, you guys have said it a couple times, history will repeat itself. You know, you got to be conscious of that, aware of that. And I think that's the takeaway, is that for me, like you said, none of these people are these monsters from like some science fiction type thing, real people. And somehow you got from point A to point B to where you could do that. And I think just seeing that character and seeing that is boy, just to be beyond vigilant to prevent that from taking over. And you're right, Dennis. It's like, how can you say, well, if I was alive, that I would do this, or I would do that, or I would do the other thing. But it's just, you know, you can only be responsible for yourself and yeah, obviously family. And you just, maybe even starting with not letting that kind of thing even come into your heart, right? Not being manipulated into, and I'm repeating what you guys said, manipulating them into looking at them as others, so that, like the Peter Gabriel song, you put them in a box and you can kick them around. And I think, yeah, but that's kind of what I saw, is that character just, and I'm not trying to say this in some kind of bullheaded way to sound tough. He didn't strike me as someone that was very intelligent. He wasn't very strong. It wasn't like he was some capable military leader. He just seemed like some guy in power that just had a screw loose and behaved like a spoiled child, and just didn't even have the connection, you know, that those were people that he was treating that way. Yeah. So anyways, I kind of circled back. I've been sitting here just thinking, listening to all you guys. So I kind of circled back to an early thing, but that's not quite a scene, but that's something that really just stood out in my mind with that character.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had that scene with Goethe, and he's talking about, Schindler leaves the last space on the list blank, and he wants the girl, Helen, I think was her name, and Goethe's like, no, you can't have her, and he's like, well, I'll play you a game of blackjack for her. You know, if you get this, I'll pay you double, but if I win, you know, then I'm taking her, like I want her, and he goes into this whole thing of, no, I can't do that because I want her to grow old with me. He's going through this whole thing of, you know, he hasn't treated her like a human being this entire time, but that's another part where it's kind of this contradiction of, he's an awful, terrible person doing these atrocious things. And I don't know, in that scene, what I think leaves it kind of a little ambiguous is I can't tell if he does genuinely have some feelings for her, or if it's more of a, well, no, she's mine. Like, I don't want my thing to get away. I think it's really tough. Like, the way he does that scene, the acting in that scene, I think it leaves ambiguous enough that you could say maybe he genuinely does have some feelings for her, and that's conflicting in his mind, the thoughts he feels like he should have about Jews in general. But then he delivers that terrible line of, Schindler says, you can't take her back to Vienna with you. You can't do that. And he goes, I know. If I really loved her, I'd take her out in the woods and mercifully shoot her in the back of the head. I'm like, yep, okay, no, you're a terrible person.
Yeah. Yeah, the one other thing, I figured out where it was and I haven't, but the credit goes to also, I think, of like editing, because I know, John, you've edited, obviously you edit these podcasts, but you know, you've edited movies, films, things like that, some of the stuff that you've done and worked on. The editor in this, man, Michael Kahn, is like, God, I saw this guy when I was doing the intro to video for like editing and my middle school classes for my class. Yeah. And I came across him and I was like, oh my God, when I looked at his reel of how much stuff he is, his credit list, holy cow, this guy's phenomenal. But he did Schindler's List, and he was saying like he had to dissociate. He goes, because it's so powerful, and the film affected them so much that you have to disassociate and see it each as a scene and hope that when you bring it together, it melds together at full force. He said otherwise you'd be like Steven Spielberg, who would just have to leave every day and couldn't even like bear with what he just shot. Couldn't even like almost look at it. It was like because it was so real to him and so personally affected. And this guy had the same task, but he had to look at all this footage and he had to carve it out. And I'm just thinking, man, like that just amazing feat of editing this type of film.
Yeah.
And making those choices, and you can't screw it up.
Well, and Khan himself, I don't know if you mentioned this just now or not, Khan himself is also Jewish. So the fact that you, not only is this going to be a tough movie to edit and watch, regardless of what your background is, but the fact that he was born to a Jewish family and then has to edit this movie
and disassociate from it in order to edit it.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the hardest thing. So how do you we look at it like you said, Pat, 24 hours later, and he's still not disassociated from it. He's like, it's with him, you know?
Yeah.
And scenes are with us how many years later? And it was like, this guy had to take that raw footage and do that. And anyway, like the one scene and that's what I was going back to with Steven Spielberg. It's the scene where they're having, where what's his name drinks with him for the first time because he refuses to drink with Schindler. And then finally he does, like, we better have that drink now.
Yeah.
And when he was going through that whole thing, the pacing is what they were talking about. And I think Spielberg credits Khan with the fact that he's like, that was all created in the editing room. It wasn't scripted that way. It wasn't shot that way. He lets them look at each other. And the guy's like, I like for characters to look at each other's eyes. And he's like, let that silence sort of be there between two men. Like there's that silence at times. They don't just read these words quickly and fast right out. There's a whole sort of connection going on there that's happening between the words. And it's just a really cool scene, though, I think, and makes it powerful. You don't think about those things, but from an editor standpoint, it's really interesting. Like, yeah, why don't they just, if it's written down like this, wouldn't you just be like, and then hear that Spielberg did not write it like that. He's like, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
You know, there was the editor helped create that in the editing room, not on the script, not on the notes, not while I was filming it. It was literally basically almost created in the editing room the way he paced it. So,
anything else you guys want to say before we move into 3 questions? I'll repeat one more time. I really honestly believe that if you are old enough to see this movie, you should see this movie.
My question for you would be, what do you think is the proper age? I struggled with this.
You know, we probably, I know I mentioned, Bo, that we watched this when we were in high school. I feel like we were probably juniors or seniors. I don't think we would have been any younger than that. So I'm guessing we're looking at we were probably 17 years old is my guess. You know, I would say.
Was that the right time?
I would say yes. I think that's the right time. I mean, obviously it depends on the kid. I will also say I think that I could have watched this even a couple years earlier because I had the experience of going to a concentration camp and seeing photos, you know, of some of the same things that you see in this movie, seeing still photos of it and seeing other documentary footage of things like this. But I mean, this kind of brings it to life in a way that's way more intense than even that. So I think I probably could have seen it and understood at least a portion of the impact of it at age 15 or 16. I probably wouldn't show it to anybody younger than 16.
Younger than 16. Okay.
Yeah.
Pat, what do you think?
Boy, I don't know.
Would you show this to your kids?
You know, not yet, right? And that's kind of the thing. Like, I think if I could look back, that would be good. But I mean, you know how it is. Like, I know what it's like to be a dad for up to a 14-year-old. Do you know what I'm saying? I think I would have to have up to 18, 19, 20-year-old, then look back and say, okay, maybe, do you know what I'm saying? Or maybe not like that old. Maybe once I see what it's like to teach to parent, I should say, a 16-year-old, I might say, oh, okay, maybe that, or a 17-year-old. Okay, maybe that. I think like for something like this, I don't know that I could say, oh, you know what? When Dominic's this old, we're going to fire this up. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I would have to look back in retrospect to say, okay, I know when this is the right age, or I'm going to feel it. Like, I think we're good here.
Yeah. I don't think anybody should be in a hurry to show their kids this movie, regardless of what age they are. I mean, I think you would know, as a parent, you'd know the appropriate time to show this. I think that my son just turned 16. I think he would be fine watching this movie. I think he'd be able to understand it. And I think probably by the time my daughter would be 16, 17, you know, she would too. So I think off the top of my head, that would be since that's close to the age I saw it, I think that would be appropriate. But yeah, everybody's kids are going to be different. Like Pat, you and I have talked before, like some of the stuff that one of my kids watched, my other kid couldn't necessarily handle it at the time. You've talked about how certain things that I'm watching with my kids. I remember a few years ago you saying things like, yeah, but this one of my kids really reacts to things like that. So I'm not sure we're going to be watching that right now, but maybe later. So I think anybody who's listening to this and trying to think of like, I want my family to watch this at some point, but what age do I do it? Obviously your own kids, your own family, but I don't know. I would say probably not before 16. That's just my thought.
Bo, what do you think?
You work in a high school, Bo?
Yeah, well, and that's part, like I work in a high school. I don't have kids, so it's weird for me to even respond to this. But I think somewhere in high school, especially as you start to learn more about what happened and understand it. So maybe in that 15, 16, 17 range makes sense. Too much younger, and you're just not going to appreciate the gravity of it. Or the flip side of that is it's going to overwhelm you. And that's the real fear, right? That this horrible tragedy is just going to overwhelm the thought process. But anyone who knows and can process what happened should see this movie, because there is so much more to history than what we get in school, that more of these type of stories need to be.
Yeah. And that's why I kind of posed that question, because I actually am waiting in a response, because I did not show this to my kids, but I'm curious if they've seen it. And I remember consciously taking this one from the library, from the shelf, and putting it back multiple times. At 12, 13, right around there, when they were 12 or 13, I thought about it. And like 8th grade, right around there, for when Hunter was like 8th grade, especially. Then again in high school. And I put it back. And there were just times where I was like, it didn't feel, you said, John, you'll kind of feel when it was right, and it just never was right. Now, here's the flip side of that. The dilemma for me is, this is a film everyone must see, in my opinion. And when you asked the question of how many times you're going to see this film, or it's not one, I said, I'll probably see this film 4 times. So I've seen it once, obviously, as I think it was about 21, 22, 23, somewhere in there, whenever, 23, when it came out, and that was the original time. So I saw it as kind of a young adult. I saw it again one more time. So that's twice. And I always said that I'll see it 2 more times. Once with my kids, and hopefully once with my grandkids. Like, it's a responsibility that I need them to see that and make sure that they see that film.
Yeah.
And I haven't shown it to my kids yet. So I feel like part of me is like, not drop the ball, but that time wasn't ready then. And then life gets busy, and they're busy, and all these things are happening. And it's like, there will be a time where we'll be again together, where we're all in the same place for a considerable amount of time, where we can watch some films. And this is one that's on the list. Watch, like, and they'll both be 20 and 22 at this point if they haven't seen it. And again, I asked them if they've seen it somewhere else, and I haven't gotten a response back yet, but I don't think they have. But it was one where I was like, definitely. Now they had seen Life is Beautiful. I put Schindler's List back and did Life is Beautiful.
Okay.
I don't know if that was a cop-out. I don't know if that was, because I don't want to demean Life is Beautiful, but because it's a comedy and it gets sort of the seriousness, and it's a different thing, but covering it the same subject in a different way. And it's really a fable about a father and his love for his son, and how he goes through these lengths to create a game to help him go through something really, really tough.
Yeah.
Where this is more, like you said, documentary sort of vibe to it, coming to life. So it's heavier. Where Life is Beautiful has funny moments in it. And so I think I went that way, and I put that one back and did that one. And to this day, I'm always like, should I have shown it at 16? Because does it help prevent your kid from becoming, on this side versus that side, or somebody who has a box marked them so easily? And I don't think any of us have kids that are in in that category. But my point is, it's just, you want to really solidify that. You don't want to be one of these people in history. You want to be this guy in history.
Right.
And those things form at certain ages. And I'm like, pivotal ages. And what is that pivotal age? And when do you show a film like this? So people out there, I'd be curious too. Put in the comments.
Yeah. Really, really quickly before we and I meant to do this earlier but I didn't want to miss it because sometimes we miss this part, but I definitely wanted to mention, at least for a moment before we get into the 3 questions, the soundtrack of this movie. And at the very least, I wanted to play just a little bit of the theme music for this. I have had every playlist I think I've ever created since I've had digital music where I've put on movie themes and movie scores. I think I have always had the theme from Schindler's List on any of those lists. You know, I am, when it comes to classical music, I'm always a fan of the violin. It's one of my favorite instruments to listen to. And I think the combination of John Williams' score and Itzhak Perlman performing on this, it's a beautiful theme, but a devastating and sad theme as well. So I just want to play just a little bit of the theme here, and then if you guys want to comment any more on any of the music, we can talk about that too. But let's play a little portion of the theme from Schindler's List. You know, it's a weird connection to make, but that theme also reminds me of the theme when, at the beginning of the first X-Men movie, when Magneto is a boy and he's in the Nazi camp and he's being torn away from his parents. Sounds so similar to me.
Yeah.
This is obviously just a much more haunting and melancholy theme than that, but I mean, and that one is still devastating as well. But Michael Kamen, I think, or Kamen, I don't remember how you say his name. Is it Kamen or Kamen? Do you guys know?
That I don't know. I don't know.
I think he did
I always think it was Kamen from what I heard.
Okay. Yeah, he's the one that did the soundtrack for the X-Men movie. But I always, whenever I hear this theme, it might be also because I think I have those two themes together on all my playlists. They're right next to each other. So that's probably why. But
right.
Yeah. Was there any other music real quick that you guys wanted to comment on, or just the music in general?
For me, the music in general, and just so strong, such a strong theme. So
music is mood, and that just mood is just so somber.
Yeah.
Yet beautiful at times, but it's just haunting. So it's just a great soundtrack. Just works perfectly for this.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies again that you feel like just fired on all cylinders.
Yeah.
I go back and I go, what would I do differently? I definitely wouldn't have made it shorter. You know, I wouldn't have, is what I said. It's what it needed to be. I don't know what's an improvement here. I don't know what you do. I think perfectly cast. Great performances, great music, great editing choices.
And
great.
when you see those, I mean, we don't really care that much about numbers, but when you see like the cinema score and the flick metrics and all the different scores that are in the A+ and the 90s and the other stuff, you kind of think like on the short list of what might be considered near perfect movies, is this a near perfect movie? And I think I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
It was one of my top 10, and I usually try to put those into the near perfect movie category of like, I try to judge it based on like, what is there anything that could have been better? Is there any area of weakness that you could have been like, I would have maybe changed that? In most movies, there's something where you'd be like, yeah, maybe the ending I didn't like, or maybe this scene, or maybe that. this is one of the top 10 that I don't think is I couldn't change anything. Like Sixth Sense for me as well as in there, like just those type of movies where you're like, nope, I think it's perfectly done. I got nothing.
I wasn't left with the feeling of, man, if they just would have.
Yes, exactly.
I don't have that.
You're simply left in awe of the film and just like, wow.
Yeah, for me, it was like, you know how we talk about, well, this pulled you out of the movie or that funked that wrote it. Like for me, it was full immersion. Like I did not get taken out of the movie at all because of the strength of it. Only to think at the end, man, what does that do? Then you already mentioned it to the editor, the people making the movie. What does it do to the actor that has to play that character? You know? So I was full immersion. Like I didn't get pulled out of this movie to think about it at all. It's that's kind of a silly thing to say. I didn't get pulled out of this movie and began thinking of the construct of the movie at all. I was totally immersed in the story that they were trying to tell.
Yeah. My daughter, she just texted me. No, she did not see it.
Okay.
I never showed her, and I'm like, I want to again. I had that sucker in my hand on 3 or 4 different occasions, and was just like struggling with it.
Well,
I want like I said, like Bo, I want it to be where it has the most impact. You want it to be where they can handle it. There's too many variables that you had to worry about.
I know it's
like
crazy.
it's like if you overshoot, if you undershoot, you could do trauma. You know, it's too overwhelming. And if you overshoot, they might already be like, well, I don't care about that. You know, not saying my kids would be, but I'm saying like might not have the same effect is what I meant more of. Like not that they would care about it, but it might not be as meaningful to them. So trying to find that sweet spot of when do you show this? That's
Sounds like you've got a Thanksgiving holiday movie night.
I think well, she's coming back, and I just said you know, I told her it's one. She's like, nope, why? And I said it's our podcast movie choice, and I was just wondering because I remember I almost showed that to you guys like 3 times, but put it back on the shelf at the library.
Yeah.
And said, well, when you're coming back in town, we'll see it.
It is time for 3 questions.
He asks each traveler 5 questions. 3 questions. 3 questions.
It's impossible to answer.
Impossible because you don't know the answer.
Nobody could answer that question.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Question number 1 of the 3 questions. The scene with the girl in the red coat is probably one of the film's most memorable moments. What other movies or movie have a significant use of color or lack thereof that you find memorable? Are there other movies with a color palette or just vibrant color or lack of color, and you were like, that is burned into my memory as a great use or unuse of color?
Who's going?
I'll say some of the ones I really enjoy. I don't know. I was trying to decide if it was going to go at the top of my list. I've said this before. I really enjoy the movie What Dreams May Come, and just the fact that when they go into heaven and it's made of paint and based on the painting that his wife did, and I think those scenes are beautiful. In fact, I went to go look and see if they ever did that movie in 4K. Now that I have the nice TV and the 4K player, they have not yet. It's in Blu-ray, so I may pick it up and watch it at some point. But that one, I think in particular, is a favorite of mine when it comes to color. There were a couple of others that, as I was trying to just make a list off the top of my head, ones that I remembered had just a great use of color in them. I've enjoyed the movie Atomic Blonde, the one with Charlize Theron. It's got a lot of neon. It's supposed to be taking place at the time that the Berlin Wall is falling down in Berlin, and there's a lot of blue and pink and red neon and some different scenes where they really use color well in that. You know, I was thinking of the Everything Everywhere All at Once, really colorful in that one. Yeah, I kind of had a hard time narrowing down. I think I was going to go with What Dreams May Come. I feel like there was another one that I had that I didn't write down, and it's like on the tip of my tongue right now. But yeah, I feel like What Dreams May Come is probably the one that I'm going to say, but I know there may be, here in a minute, I'll probably remember the one that I was trying to remember. Yeah, Amelie is another one. If you guys have seen that one, the French movie, that's another one that uses color really, really well. I was going to say there's some scenes in, was it Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where color is used really well, though a lot of the fights kind of take place at night, so there's not a lot of color there. Yeah, let me go with What Dreams May Come, and if I think of anything else here in a minute, I'll let you know.
I guess I'll go next. I would say, like, early on, I always loved the way they use color with Wizard of Oz, but the one I would throw when you tell me to talk about use of color, I'm going to go with the Traffic. The drug movie. It's got that tint green, and the way they used when they were in Mexico was kind of like this, like almost like an orange, and then the city was like this. Just the tints was just a really grimy feel, and the whole movie's like that. It's just there's no normal color, and there's a certain uneasiness about all that.
Right.
So Traffic. Got a couple runners up, but I'll let Bo and Pat go.
I'll listen to all your runners, and I'll see if I get sparked with curiosity.
Bo's got to go then.
Yeah, Bo, I'm putting you on the hot seat there, buddy.
Okay. Gosh, where to begin? Color is a thing with me. Lack of and heavy color. So this was a tough one for me, John. I don't like you. I started thinking about Sin City.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking about the flip side of it. Some of the Brian Fuller, Barry Sonnenfeld stuff, like even Men in Black was very saturate. They also did a TV show together called Pushing Daisies, and the colors in that were just, it was like someone had colored in. It was so vibrant, you know? So there's those. I was thinking of another one too. There's a lot of TV show examples that come to mind. There was this show called Cold Case that we watched, and they would play with the color palette.
My mom loves that show. Yeah.
Based on whether they were now or in the past, right?
Yeah.
If they went to the past, the color palette was very muted and leaned towards blue a little bit. But then when they were today, it was warmer and more yellow, and it was just the things that you can do with color just amaze me sometimes. And yeah. So
I realized the one that probably was going to go at the top of my list, maybe even above What Dreams May Come, and that is Moulin Rouge.
Good one. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that one, but yes.
Yeah, I think
100%. The colors in that.
Yeah, that's one that I'd love to get on 4K and watch. I still have my old DVD copy of it. I would love to see that on the nice new TV with a nice, if they have a good 4K transfer of it.
Totally. Even something as genre as the Snyder Cut.
Yeah.
I mean, what he did with color there, you know.
And he did the black and white version.
Yeah.
Dennis, I know you were always a fan of The Walking Dead back in the day. Did you watch it when they re-released it in black and white?
I did not. No, I didn't get to see that. No.
Okay.
The regular Walking Dead was released in black and white.
Yeah,
I remember that. You know, I do remember that buzz about it. I mean, I don't think I've seen. No, I didn't see it.
Okay, I think it was. I want to say it was maybe just the first episode, but I feel like when it first came out, I don't know if that was like 2006 or 2007 or sometime around then. And when it first came out, I feel like it came out, and then maybe like a month later or a couple months later, they re-released the first episode in black and white, and it was cool to watch because it made you feel like it was like Night of the Living Dead. In black and white.
Yeah, that would be. I could see that. That would be pretty cool. Yeah, I'll have to go back and look and see where I can see those. I mean, I guess runners up when I talk about that, Pat, it's just, again, there's the overall, like, Traffic is like the overall color of the kind of the film all the way throughout. And then also color can be used in different ways to communicate different things. Like, so I'm going to go through that list. It would be Sixth Sense, the color red. So in Sixth Sense, the red knob, everything it uses red anytime that, you know, spirit or whatever is like, it was signs and symbols that like that was like almost like ghost-like presence. So that would be one. The other one would be a TV show that I'm sure you guys probably saw. What's the Breaking Bad? So Breaking Bad. If you notice Breaking Bad, what happens when you have Heisenberg and then you have White? White has a lighter, softer color palette, and then when you have Heisenberg and he becomes like he's the alter ego kind of guy there, it's a darker palette. And then the big one that kind of robbed an idea that I had Like when I say an idea, it was a movie that were based, and I don't know. It didn't rob it. I mean, it did at first, so it's good, but it's very subtle. A lot of people don't know it because it's an animation. But with the movie Up, if you look at the beginning of that film when he's with his wife and they're telling that story, the colors are very bright, very animated, cartoon colors. It's very just joyous, and he's so happy. And then all of a sudden, when he becomes the man, after his wife passes in the opening montage, it's very bleak. So I had an idea too, where something happened. It wouldn't be an animation, but it was a real film where something happened with a character and it was all dark. So everything was just muted down, where the whole film gives that kind of depressive state. And then as this character goes through redemption and goes through discovering kind of hope and joy in life again, things start to get brighter. So you've been almost in a dark theater for the majority of the film. And then at the end, there's this big breakout of color and light sort of thing that kind of happens. And I just had some story idea that I was always thinking of that. And then my other one would say, where this is very true of that, with, I guess it uses rain too and darkness, is The Crow.
Oh
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So those are like some of my runners up of like just using color in just a really great way, where you create a mood with it that just accentuates the story and gets you to feel more of what they kind of want you to feel. You're manipulated by the color, I guess, is what I would say. Mm-hmm. And as somebody said, all film is manipulation. I think it was that Kahn guy. I think it was. I think it was Michael Kahn.
Was it really?
Says that all film is you're always manipulating the audience. That's what you're doing. You're getting them to feel something. You're getting them to do something. And you're always manipulating them with what you show them.
Said by a true editor.
Yep.
So Patrick, did that help you or?
Yeah, that helps. I'll tell you the one that, and my phone kind of froze up there for a second. I don't think anyone missed this. I'm going to go back to the original time that color really, and that was not Mary Poppins, Wizard of Oz. The first time we saw Wizard of Oz, I thought it was, especially as a kid, so effective that you're black and white, and then it goes to color. I thought that was great. WandaVision, I thought that was very creative what they did with that show, where they were using color and then not. And obviously that was like not just one object. Well, there was a little bit of that where one object was in color. And yeah, those are kind of the ones that immediately sprung to mind.
Question number 2, Schindler's List focuses on one man's efforts to save as many lives as possible amid World War II. Are there other stories of individual contributions during any war or struggle or any other time in history that you believe should become a film? Like, are there any kind of unsung heroes from, it could be a war, could be just something else historical. So we have the life of Schindler's List here. We have the example of what he did. Is there anybody else? Anybody that's overlooked? Anybody that hasn't had their own biography film, their own biopic that you feel like should be featured? And bonus points for the more obscure historical figures.
Okay.
I mean, this is like Whose Line Is It Anyway, where the points are made up and nothing really matters.
Yeah.
What is where everything's made up and the points don't matter? Yeah.
Well,
I'll tell you mine. Mine is, and I remember reading something about this guy a little while ago, and then as I was looking up a couple things here, it kind of came back to me, and I was like, oh, no, that's probably going to be mine, because I think it just sounds fun. There was a guy that fought in, I believe it was World War II.
Are you going to say the same guy I'm talking about? Oh, this is going to be great if it is.
Did you do Jack Churchill?
No, I don't think that was his name. No.
Okay.
I don't think that was his name.
Yeah, so my guy is, his nickname was either Fighting Jack Churchill or Mad Jack Churchill, and he fought during the Second World War, and he was known for charging into battle with a bagpipe, a Scottish broadsword, and a longbow.
Okay.
And this is World War II. This is not like Braveheart times.
Right.
He charged into battle in World War II with said weaponry, and supposedly he was a bit of a character.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I can
some
see.
Of the things I read about him, and like people talking about fighting alongside him or marching into battle with him, were like, yeah, this guy was like, he's got some stories.
Bit of a character.
I think that could be a fun movie if they want to make a movie about Mad Jack Churchill. And I believe he's Scottish, so that's always a plus. Even if he's not Scottish, he still played the bagpipes and carried the sword into battle.
Right. Right. I hear you. So I actually will jump in and say there was a book that came out a number of years ago called Born to Run. And it was pretty big in the running community and gets into some things that slightly controversial within the running community because there's a whole barefoot running thing in there, but they talked about the history of running. And the guy that wrote the book, I think it was Chris McDougall is his name. He does a great job of kind of telling you like historical fiction about a given topic, but then kind of interspersing it with just an incredible story.
Is this the one? I feel like this is the one that you talked about one time about the tribe of people who can like run for hundreds of miles and not stop.
Yes. Yeah. They talk about it. There's indigenous peoples that were, known to be runners. And anyways, there's a story where he goes through and the author went down to try to find this group of people as well as an American boxer who turned to a runner, became a runner and everything, decided to get away from everything and just was living and running in the Copper Canyon, Mexico. And it's just a crazy, amazing book. I mean, I think it would be an awesome movie, especially because his whole thing in it was not only researching these people, but setting up like a big a race to help benefit the tribe, the group of people and such. And the cast of characters in this book that he goes traveling with, that are all runners and ultra runners, that they all go together looking for this group of people in this missing guy. I mean, it's just like, you can't make this stuff up. So I think that would be very good. And he actually wrote a book called Natural Born Heroes. It was kind of following the same pattern as Born to Run, but he kind of studied, hey, what makes a hero? Like that was his thing. And he talked about a different group of individuals and so forth. But he got talking, the story that was in with this nonfiction book he was writing, the story that went into it was set during the Second World War on the island of Crete. And it was all about how the Germans had invaded Crete and were just going to use it as like a staging area or a base. And so the Cretan resistance fought back, obviously. And the more they could tie the Germans up, the more they could hold the Germans there, the weaker that they would be on some other front. And I mean, so what they decide to do is they decide to abduct a German general, right? Not just like a lieutenant or a mid-grade officer or a colonel. They abduct a general on Crete and then spend, I don't know how long, invading the German army on the island of Crete. I mean, the story is amazing. And the way this guy tells it is pretty awesome. And then he's got a bibliography where there's different books written by the characters written of the characters. And I mean, again, just the cast of characters that were involved in this abduction of a German general. And I can't pronounce it correctly, but I think if you look it up, it's on Crete abducting a general. And the general's name was General Crete, I think. I'm horribly mispronouncing it. Anyways, that would be an incredible movie to see that. And not only that, and here's the runner geek side of me. There was a guy, and I'm going to mispronounce his name, George Psychondakis, and he was a Cretan shepherd. And then all of a sudden, the war was on, and Crete was at the epicenter of this attempt by British Secret Service and Cretan resistance to like do this. And so they hired this guy, and he was a runner that would like run messages from one side of the island to the other. And so like there were stories of this guy like taking off at night, avoiding German patrols, covering 50, 60, 100 miles at night, delivering a message, living on like no sleep and no food, and then running a message to the other side of the island. I mean, it was just the characters that come out of this. So yeah, I didn't have much of an answer for the first one, but now for the second one, I gave you like 5 answers. But I would say anything of the Chris McDougall Born to Run book, anything from his follow-up book, Natural Born Heroes, and the abduction of the German general. I mean, you could pick any one of those characters and make it a biopic. You could pick the story from the book of the abduction of the German general and make it an adventure. I mean, it's incredible stories. So
yeah,
that would be my answer.
Nice. I do want you to know that every time you said the word Crete,
okay,
I was fighting the urge. It's like
I know, John.
It's
I
like
love
that.
You.
It's like that Three Stooges skit whenever they say Niagara Falls, and they all
turn.
Yeah.
Step.
I'm sitting there the whole time. I'm sitting there the whole time, and I'm just going. I just came from Crete with women that look like Zorba. Whew, thank you.
These girls are just so pretty.
Gomer, you here in Vietnam?
Yes, I am. Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Continue.
Cretan camouflage. No better way to blend into a crowd of drunken Greeks. That is humor. I recognize it. I also recognize. Yeah, you shut your hole. Well, now we're quoting that movie. At least we can have a little chuckle after.
Yeah, there you go.
Discussing such heavy topic matter. But yeah, that'd be my answer. Boy, you guys check out the Natural Born Heroes, but then Born to Run are just two real fun books.
Yeah. Who else deserves a movie?
I found a really interesting one. Has anyone ever heard of the Night Witches?
No.
Night Witches.
Made up of only women. The 588th Night Bomber Regiment was trained for bombing missions behind German lines, flying 1920s era planes built of wood and canvas with no radio or radar, their bombs held to the wings by wire. The construction gave the planes the advantage of flying below radar and surprising the enemy in the dead of night. Flying 15 to 18 missions per night each, their planes often returned riddled with bullets. And this was a Russian, sorry, I should have said this was a Russian, like, Air Force regiment, whatever they called their Air Force. There's a story of one of them who was 19 years old. And I mean, you can keep going, but like, they were unofficially known as Stalin's Falcons. The Germans called them Nachtehexen, or the Night Witches. It just sounds really cool.
Yeah. Nachtehexen was something I bought from IKEA too, but.
Well, either that or that was when you had the
That's true. Yeah.
Exactly.
That
one too.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Like, I don't know, Steven Spielberg, if you're mowing your lawn right now, or if Steven Spielberg's assistant is mowing his lawn right now.
That's more like it. Yeah.
Go tell Mr. Spielberg he needs to make a movie about that. I would watch that movie.
Because that sounds cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's got the built-in movie title too. You want to call it?
Yeah, it does.
Night Witches. That's an awesome movie title.
Yes,
sounds incredible.
So somebody make that. We'll go watch it. Oh, there you go, Dennis. Do you want to write a screenplay?
There you go. That would be good.
Dennis, what do you got?
Oh, my title for mine would be called The Incredibly Stupid One. So the story of this that I came across, I was like, God, I think this would be pretty good. So there was a guy, his name is Douglas Hegdahl. And when you mentioned the war, I thought you were going there. I was like, oh, maybe you saw this too. Cause I forgot when I came back and I put it in my notes. So it was in my notes. So I had to go back, find my note section and look in when I wrote this down. But the story of him was he was in Vietnam. He was then assigned to U.S. Canberra missile cruiser position off the Gulf of Tonkin, 3 miles off the coast of Vietnam. On April 6, 1967, Douglas was knocked overboard by a blast from the ship's guns. His shipmates did not report him missing for 2 days. Having fallen overboard with no life preserver and no identification, Douglas was assumed to be dead and the crew held a memorial service. What they didn't know was that Douglas had floated for 12 hours until Cambodian fishermen found him and brought him to shore. Once he arrived in Vietnam, Douglas was turned over to Vietnamese militiamen and was taken to Hanoi Hilton, the prison. Interrogators at Hanoi Hilton did not believe his story at first. They rather than give up information to his captors, they thought he was a CIA agent. Douglas pretended to be an illiterate fool. When he was instructed to write anti-war statements against the United States, he agreed but pretended to be unable to read or write. The Vietnamese were shocked, but they thought they had found the perfect candidate who was gullible enough to be tricked into publicly supporting their cause. They assigned someone to teach Douglas to read and write, but when he appeared incapable of learning, his captors gave up on him. Douglas became known as the Incredibly Stupid One by the Vietnamese. Being non-threatening, he was given free reign of almost the entire camp. During his time at the Hanoi Hilton, Douglas was given the task of sweeping prison grounds. He used this as an opportunity to do what he could to thwart the Vietnamese. When no one was looking, he once filled 5 Army trucks, gas tanks with dirt and leaves so they cannot operate. Douglas would also take advantage of this freedom within the camp, often passing notes, communicating to other prisoners as he swept. His most amazing accomplishment was, however, saving the lives of hundreds of prisoners, providing a wealth of information about the prison to the United States. Douglas had a remarkable memory and was able to memorize the names of prisoners, the dates they were captured, the dates they were arrived at the prison, as well as other personal information. Upon the using the nursery rhyme, Old MacDonald Had a Farm as a mnemonic device, he memorized over 250 prisoners' names. When the Vietnamese decided to release 3 prisoners from the camp, Douglas didn't want to go. The captured American soldiers had made a no-go home pact in which they agreed that they would all go home together or not at all. But Douglas was ordered by his commanding officer to return home in his order to share the valuable information he had required at the prison, and was thus released with 2 other POWs in 1969. Back in the United States, he provided the names of the military and intelligence personnel who were thought to be deceased. His global impact came when he confronted the Vietnamese at the Paris peace talks in 1970. The information he provided, including the locations and horrible conditions of the prison camps, as well as the torture practices used by the Vietnamese, were finally shared with the world. Exposing the Vietnamese this way led them to keep POWs alive until the war was over, saving hundreds of prisoners. Bam. So I thought that's an awesome story.
That is awesome.
I could see that film being that's just, I don't know. I saw that. I was like, God, I need to write that screenplay.
Heck
Perfect title too, The Incredibly Stupid One.
Exactly. Like it's
I mean, it's got some. You can do some funny things in there because the way he's messing with the, pretending to be stupid and just like the whole. And then it's got the inspirational part, and then the sacrifice, and in the beginning you got him dying, and his own people having a memorial for him. I mean, it's just I think it's a great story. Someone's going to make that now. Luckily, no one listens to this podcast.
So there's actually
don't listen to this one. Listen to all the other ones, or just don't listen to this part.
Yeah,
because I can see somebody doing that. That's made for a movie, man.
Yeah. Well, apparently they did, and I was looking to see what I'm blanking on the actor's name who played it.
In the Hanoi Hilton, there's like a little kind of nod to him, but not a full story.
So there is the actor Josh Charles. He was in Dead Poets Society. He was in Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. He was in the TV show The Good Wife. There is an episode of Drunk History. You ever watch any of those from Comedy Central?
Love that stuff.
Yeah. There's an episode of Drunk History where they're talking about this Douglas Hegdahl person, and when they show the reenactments of him being
why it was
in
ringing a bell. Yes.
Yeah. Josh Charles, the actor, is playing Doug Hegdahl in the reenactments that they do in that Drunk History episode. Yeah.
That sounds.
I got to look that up now. Yeah, that would be an awesome. I still think that'd be an awesome full-length feature film.
And then final question number 3. What is your favorite movie where a character kind of works within a system to subvert it or bring it down or get through it alive? What's your favorite movie where a character does that? I'm going to go with one that's kind of similar to this one in some ways. I'm going to go with Hotel Rwanda. I really, really enjoy that movie. I've seen that one several times now, and I really like it.
That's a great movie. Great performance, too, by, what's the name?
Don Cheadle.
Yeah, Don Cheadle.
Yeah. What have you guys got? What's another one? What's your favorite movie where somebody subverts or works within a system to subvert the system?
This was a struggle to me.
Yeah, I know. I should have read this question before. I was not prepared. And I know there's a movie I'm trying to think of there. Let's see. It's
Pat, I thought you were going to say The Matrix.
Okay. There you go. I wasn't making the connections I needed. I'll take The Matrix. That's good.
Okay.
To bring down the whole system. So just not,
Maybe I'll go with Snake Plissken and Snake Plissken and Escape from New York and Escape from LA.
It's a good one. I struggled with this one. I couldn't.
Was he trying to bring down the whole system though? Because see, that's what I kept running into is that
he presses kind of the reset button.
No, I hear you, but it's like, was his intention to bring the system down, or did he just decide at the end, like, hey, I have the opportunity, I'm gonna go for it? Well, but in all fairness, that wasn't in the movie. That wasn't Schindler's thing. He didn't want to bring down the system at the beginning.
Yeah, he didn't want to. He kind of like, just evolved into that.
Yeah. Based
on conscience and opportunity. That's a good question that required more thinking on our part. That we did not properly give it.
Everyone just rejected your question.
Yeah, I feel like this should be easy. The movies just aren't coming to my brain. And I thought about it a little while, and Google searching this isn't easy either.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like look for a list of movies with subversive characters. That doesn't even.
It's one of those. It's one of those essay questions that gets past the AI.
Exactly. I see what you're doing here, and I don't like it.
Trying to be a good former English teacher.
I like you better when you're a bad former English teacher.
Yeah.
I'll say
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn this way, Bo.
Okay. Speaking of systems that need to come down, Andor. I'll go with Andor.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Okay.
Good one. I really dug Andor.
You got if you want to go specific characters, you could do Rogue One and Galen Erso.
Yeah, I thought about him.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm gonna think of 2 or 3 like tomorrow or something, which is not helpful. But.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're gonna come back to this. At night I'll be.
If you just want to pick on a particular character, it doesn't have to. You don't have to think of like the whole movie as a whole, but like a character who works within a system to either survive it or sneak something past it, or even to possibly bring it down. So, like,
can you phrase that question in a story or sentence?
Can I spell the word for you at the Scripps National Spelling Bee? Yeah,
that's right.
Can you spell the word in a sentence? Sure.
So just say Stalag 17, but he doesn't bring down. I was thinking of like William Holden's character, but
yeah, it's funny because I was
the guy and he wasn't the guy, and he ends up.
I was thinking like Hogan's Heroes because they all play messy nice for a while, but they're always trying to escape. But that didn't feel right.
And I thought on the flip side, I thought like Unbreakable, where you thought it was Samuel L. Jackson's character was really kind of underlying the whole, creating this whole sort of situation that.
Okay, so but Samuel L. Jackson just sent me somewhere. What about Rhodey? We find out is a Skrull who's been working to dismantle the government in whatever that show was.
Mm-hmm.
That was just on that I can't remember the title of now either.
Secret Invasion.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a perfect example of what you were going for, but I feel like this should be easier.
I know.
I was trying to think of like movies with double agents and sort of trying to go down that road.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight. Isn't that what made the Joker so awesome? In The Dark Knight, he worked within the system because he just wanted to see it all burn. And obviously he worked within the system just to manipulate people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you could say the whole Palpatine character in Star Wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I feel like I might have overthought this.
I think we're John, are we like totally morphing your question into something that you weren't asking?
Yes.
I mean,
that's what that's.
We're making up our own question.
I'm reading the subtext. I'm reading the subtext.
Maybe.
We're rejecting his question.
Well, I was just trying to think characters that would be similar or do similar things to what Oscar Schindler does in this movie.
Right, and that's why some of these I rejected.
Well, you took the best one, Hotel Rwanda, which is almost like it's not an identical, but it's very close. A man in power who has the opportunity to help people and is kind of pulling the wool over the eyes of the captors or the bad guys in order to risk his life and save other people at the same time.
Right, and it's my show, so I'll do that.
Yeah, I know. That's why you went first on that one.
But no, I mean, like, characters like that. Like, are there other examples of somebody working within a system, even possibly pretending to be a villain, you know, or cooperating? Think of like characters who cooperate with something, at least until they can get to the point where they can either get other people out or they can get themselves out.
I mean, I can use a current movie that has similar to that, but I don't think you guys seen it. Nobody saw the other one that we talked about before, The Sound of Freedom. There is a character in there who is based on a real guy who was a very wealthy man who at some point had his Schindler's moment with a girl and now basically devotes his life to freeing them by it's not your main character in this, it's a side character. And he's pivotal in pulling up the operation there, but he then acts like he is kind of an American player and then what he would get, basically gets these girls and then gives them freedom. And he was doing this, so he acts like he's a kind of a scumbag in order to kind of get them free. So he buys their freedom.
Okay.
Ever since one incident. So there's that, and that's a perfect thing where he's like in the same situation. So he kind of helps when this other character, Jim Caviezel's character, comes over. He helps kind of. Here's how you have to infiltrate this word. You can't dress like that. You know, you're dressed like like a cop right now. It's kind of like you got to look like you're a partying American on tourist who's ready to, you know, and that's so that's what he has, this whole big setup. So he's a rich guy. I think he owns like a nightclub or something there, and has kind of sells that role. But it's exactly that. Like I forget what his actual name is.
Okay.
Because he's a real person too in real life, but based on that. But that's one. I feel like there was one with slavery too that I've seen that just. Yeah, there's going to be at least one or two that pop in overnight that I think of.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, and some of them like certain spy movies, stuff like that. Like I think of the TV series Turn. Did any of you guys watch that on AMC?
I have not.
It was Turn, Washington's Spies. It was about the Culper Ring during the Revolutionary War. That was a good one. Like it was like Revolutionary War spies. I feel like it came out. I feel like it came out around the same time as that Hell on Wheels show that had Pike in it. Well, I'll let that one percolate a little bit, and then if you guys have some answers later on, we can revisit this one.
Okay.
I will fully admit it was a difficult question. Like once I was immediately like, oh yeah, Hotel Rwanda, and then after that I was like, let's try to Google this.
Mm-hmm.
And as I tried to Google
the words just don't form into a clean question.
Like I tried to Google, like, you know, movie characters who subvert a system from within, and that didn't really work well.
No.
Movie characters who collaborate with enemy to save lives, and that didn't even give me a ton of stuff. You know, so I kept trying all these different ways. Characters like Oscar Schindler, or
movies that depict a Schindler's List moment. I tried that. Yeah, this was an interesting one. We've come up with some.
That's some good ones.
Some sort of half examples, but I don't know that we've hit on the. I don't know that we've hit on the perfect spirit of it. You know.
Yeah. Well, it may just be another sign that Schindler's List is a near perfect movie.
There you go. I like it.
Yeah. It's hard to
makes me feel less dumb that way too.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Schindler's List. Again, if you have not seen this movie, we highly recommend that you go check this one out. Watch this movie, but also consider some of the suggestions we had in terms of maybe sharing it with others, depending on what age they might be. So you listening, the people in your family or in your sphere of influence. So as my mother used to tell me all the time, use your best judgment. Hated it.
And then think about maybe what someone smarter than you might do.
Yes. Always hated it when she would say that too. So real quick, our next episode's October. We are coming up on October next, and it is horror month. We have our Patreon episodes are Something Wicked This Way Comes from 1983. Patreon shorts are It Started in 93 with Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. and It Ended in 93, Cheers. Then our regular episodes are Fire in the Sky, Hocus Pocus, Needful Things, Judgment Night, and Leprechaun. Then in November, we've got Thanks for the Laughs. Our Patreon episodes are King Kong from 1933. Patreon shorts are It Started in 93 with The X-Files, and It Ended in 93 with Quantum Leap. And then our regular episodes in the month of November are So I Married an Axe Murderer, Dazed and Confused, Wayne's World 2, Grumpy Old Men, and Robin Hood Men in Tights. Tights. So, that's what we got coming up. As always, gents, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, John, except for that last question.
Thanks.
This was fun.
Nice.
All right, everybody. Be excellent to each other. Go watch some good movies, and we'll see you back here next time.